back to another episode of the Straight from the Crest podcast. As always, I'm your host, Michael David Krestovich.
Welcome
Exciting
to the
show
Straight
today.
from
It's
the
been a
Crest
couple weeks,
podcast.
obviously. We've taken a few weeks off with Penn State. A 31-0 win over Iowa, 41-13 win last weekend over Northwestern. Garrett Bastardi joins the show as always. We're going to touch on Penn State's win, kind of what they're expecting going into the bye week, our major takeaways, and then kind of a new segment here. We're going to open up our coverage and discuss the whole landscape of college football here. We're going to discuss our top 4 teams, the best games to watch this weekend, and really where Penn State's at heading into this bye week as the Nittany Lions have a week off to prepare for the Minutemen of UMass. This time I'd like to welcome in my co-host, my man, Garrett Bastardi, college football guru. Garrett, how we feeling? How you doing, brother?
Excited, Mikey. A couple weeks off. We got to see each other up at the Whiteout. We got to take in some good high school football up on the mountain in Bald Eagle. And excited for the show. I think it's going to, for those who do listen to us, we'll have a pretty clear picture of the college football landscape, approaching halfway through the season, which is crazy that we're already, through mid-October. Spooky season is here.
I know. That is another thing. For our longtime listeners, you guys are familiar with spooky season. It's the idea of these bizarre happenings happening in the spooky month. First and foremost, as you see the flag behind me, we are brought to you today by Protocol Beverage. Protocol Beverage is designed for high-octane individuals with active lifestyle who want to enjoy themselves, but also seek protein content to refuel. Work hard so you can play hard. Must be 21 to enjoy. Garrett, let's dive right into it. Let's first talk about kind of the last few weeks. Let's backtrack a couple, and we're not going to spend too much time because Penn State picked up 2 wins. They picked up 2 Big Ten wins, 2 wins that we kind of traditionally Penn State slips up in one of these games. It's a look-ahead game. Penn State got crossed it. They're heading into the bye week. As I mentioned before, it's the 31-0 shutout win in historic defensive fashion at home in front of that Whiteout where we were obviously able to reconnect there. And then last weekend, kind of a backdoor cover to take down the Wildcats of Northwestern, that haunting 11 a.m. kick that we've talked about since we were 13 years old, that we would make jokes about in the high school hallway. But we're here now. And just kind of let's touch on the Iowa game. But before we really go anywhere else, of course, 4 touchdowns from Drew Allar. 76 yards surrendered on defense, dominated time of possession, 45 minutes to 13 minutes. The Wildcats had held the ball, held them to 1 for 9 on third down. The first shutout of a Power 5 opponent for Penn State since 1999 when they shut out your Texas Aggies. Your takeaways from that kind of
had to bring that in there. Huh?
I snuck it in. It was a subtle jab.
Wow, you really did sneak that in there. Was not expecting that. This team's weird, man. They're obviously very good in a lot of aspects. The Iowa game was basically when you, me, or AJ, or Colin, or any of our buddies are playing NCAA, and it's just put clock on, and just offensively, we're gonna run it for 3 yards. We're gonna run it for 3 yards. Maybe we'll throw a quick slant, get the first down, be up 10-0, and then open things up and just in the second half, and all the while having clock on and having the ball for 75-80% of the game. That was a performance that was very workmanlike, very like Michigan, Georgia-esque in the last several years of just kind of taking your opponent and, shredding them one play at a time, one drive at a time. And so, nothing has offensively has been like, wow, like everything that like they click, they're so good, which I think has been very surprising for all of us. It's just been, like I said, it's been something that the game just kind of, as it goes, the talent starts to take over. You start to see the gaps of how much talented, how much better from each position Penn State is than their opponents so far this season. And so, I have a lot of mixed feelings. The Illinois, Iowa, Northwestern games were very similar. The West Virginia game was very similar. All the games just kind of start off kind of slow. right, Mike? And then just in the second half, the defense kind of takes over, gets a turnover here or there. The offense takes advantage. Boom, cover, right? Boom, 31-point win, 28-point win, 23-point win. Quietly, West Virginia is, a sneaky contender in the Big 12 this year. Went on the road, beat TCU, beat Texas Tech at home. They're going to be a team that's going to win 8 games this year. And, we kind of dispatched of them pretty easily. But a couple things that, you notice is, Nick Singleton hasn't had a game over 80 yards rushing yet so far this year. We've only had 100-yard rusher. Drew hasn't thrown a pick this year so far. I kind of almost want him to throw an interception, because if you ever play golf and you're through 12 holes and you're like, man, I haven't made a bogey yet, at least, when you're trying to play it at a higher level, if you're like, I haven't made a bogey yet, you start kind of thinking about that. Like, man, I'm going to start being careful and not trying to take chances because I want to stay perfect, right? I want to have a bogey-free round. I'm starting to get that feel with Drew where it's like, okay, I'm going to try to stay risk averse. That's going to work for 10 games this year. It's not going to work against Ohio State and Michigan. Okay. And that's what we've said from day one. Every time we've done a pod this year, it's been, how are we graded against those two teams? Right. And so, I'm very happy we're 5-0. We are going to be 6-0 going into Columbus on October 22nd. I'm not totally sure the product that we've seen on the field right now overall, if it will get it done in Columbus. But I'm never going to say I don't love a 31-0 win against Iowa. I'm never going to say I don't love a 41-13 win at Northwestern. It's been interesting, and I'd love to hear your take and thoughts and where I'm maybe wrong here. I'm sitting there freaking out that it's 10-10 at the half against a Northwestern team that clearly is not very good. One of the worst rushing defenses in the country, and we can't run the ball on them. People who know more than me, I kind of want to know what's going on with all of that. Are we just holding everything in, waiting for October 22nd, or like what's going on?
Yeah, man. I mean, I agree with you. I think those 2 wins, when you look at that, such a dominating performance against the Hawkeyes at home, and then the anticipation going into Evanston last weekend, boom, right from the opening kick, fumble, turnover, tied at 10 at the half. And, man, it brought me back, because I thought, like, we talked about this earlier in the year, man, like, we thought we cleared that hurdle of 2016 where we toy with these bad teams and we're closing the gap. Because let me be clear, there is a distinctive gap between Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. And Garrett and I are the biggest Penn State fans, grew up there, went to college there. We are the biggest Penn State fans on the planet. But you are blind if you think that we right now, because Penn State has 1 win over them Ohio State specifically in 2016. And without that fluke, and I'm not going to say it was a fluke, without that odd blocked field goal by Marcus Allen, it looks even way more lopsided. They're the dogs. Penn State facing them.
Yep.
And when you go into a Northwestern game with all that momentum, they won. They covered the spread. They looked awesome. And we talked about this at the beginning of the season. We're just kind of picking pins and needles here. We're finding little things, but it just brought me back to that. And in terms of Drew Allar, also, you were talking about his aggressiveness. I agree with you there. I think he's I think they either have to open up the playbook for him or figure out a new way to get him in space and to unlock his potential, because I think the scheme now, what they're doing is they're kind of holding him back, which I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Let the kid ball. Let him air it out. Like, okay, he throws an interception. Patrick Mahomes is the greatest quarterback in the NFL. He threw 3 interceptions Monday night. No one bats an eye. And he's been playing – Drew Allar's been playing exceptional ball, but we need him to play phenomenal. His accuracy has decreased since week 2. As better defenses are coming to play against Penn State, his accuracy has decreased. His average depth of target, ADOT, which is a stat that measures how far you're actually completing the ball, not yards after catch. His ADOT has decreased, and that's really the measures of an efficient quarterback. So I want to see this next week against UMass, a perfect get-right game, fix the special team woes, really work on getting the ball down the field, cleaning up the completion percentage. And I know some of those are attributed to drops because the Penn State wideouts, they've been exceptional, but they haven't been to the standard of where we want it. But
well, and Mike, like, especially you made a good point about the UMass game. you don't even have to open up the playbook. I would just love to see, hey, let's throw a couple fly routes. Let's get the wide receiver some experience and going up and high pointing a jump ball. We haven't seen one, right? And so you get into a game against Ohio State and you have a couple. Yeah, we've had the drops, but if we haven't had drops on balls that have been deep because we haven't thrown any deep balls, right? And so that's my concern is, I look at Ohio State and Emeka Ibuka and Marvin Harrison Jr. and, their lowest receiving output so far this year in a game from those guys has been 96 yards, right? We've had one game this year where we've had a guy go over 100 yards. It was KLS in the West Virginia game. 80 of it came on one play, right? That is, I just don't know if you can win those games, playing. It's just so, like we said, it's so interesting. If you can rely on never making any mistakes and playing perfect complementary football, you can win the games doing that. You can, but your margin of error is tight, right? And so, you look across the country, Georgia was losing, needed a touchdown at the end of the game to beat Auburn. They were losing against South Carolina. USC had to fend off, a kind of beat up Colorado team that only has like two guys on their team with a pulse. Alabama already has a loss. Clemson's already out of the title picture. LSU's out of the title picture already. It's still wide open, but you make a great point. Until you go beat Ohio State and Michigan, you are not up on their pedestal. You're still a level below until you go out and do it.
Yeah. And we are nitpicking to a point, but the whole point of this, why we do this is, first of all, we're fans, but this isn't a Penn State football podcast. It's straight from the crest. You're going to get our raw initial reactions. And this is not new to the people that Garrett and I are in group chats with that we're watching games. Like whether you're down here with me in Charleston or you're down in Houston with Garrett, you guys know the way we feel about Penn State. So maybe if this is like kind of Wizard of Oz team, like, oh no, Penn State's not the greatest team. We are a great team. Penn State's a great football
We're very good.
And they have the fortune of not it being necessarily a down year, but nobody knows who's good. It was funny because last year in the NFL, like all these upsets were happening. And every week I would talk to Beck and we would joke like the Broncos knocked off the Chiefs very early in the season. We're like, are the Broncos good? And this year in college football, like, wait, is this team good? But I mean,
right.
All that's aside, Penn State, ever since the Ohio State win last year, they have won every single game by double digits. They are doing something right. Those are our takeaways. Now we head into a bye week, a week to prepare, rest, which is much needed bye. It's really much needed bye. And next week, on next week's show, we'll break down UMass. We're going to preview that as well, as lay out next week's slate. But UMass is 1-4 right now. They play as a 20-point underdog Saturday to Toledo. They have losses by 45, 24, 13 this year. There's not much we're going to say about the X's and O's. We're going to give you guys a brief flyover. And that really concludes our Penn State portion of the show here. We're going to transition into our new dialect here, our new segment. We're going to open up the landscape and talk about the rest of this college football world outside of State College here. And a great weekend for football. A great weekend to have a bye for Penn State. It's going to be nice to just sit back. I mean, I thought last week was going to be super relaxing, and it was the second half. But we got the Red River rivalry, Bama, TAMU. Garrett's a big Aggies fan, as you guys know, and just a whole lot more. So we're going to kind of go game by game, talk about what we're looking for in each game, offer our predictions. We're going to give out two best bets at the end. We're also going to keep track of these bets. And then at the end of the show, we will wrap it up by each giving our top four teams. And those top four teams are, if the season ended today, those four are the best teams. Not necessarily that they go to the playoffs. It's who's impressed us. And let's kind of first talk about this Red River rivalry between the Sooners and the Longhorns here, because I mean, you mentioned West Virginia. West Virginia is a 4-1 team, 5-1 team. I'm sorry, and they're kind of on the outside looking in to this Oklahoma and Texas team. But in my opinion, the winner of this Oklahoma-Texas game, they go on and win the Big 12, with a cakewalk.
And we very well might have just a rematch of these two teams in the Big. There's no divisions in the Big 12, so they might just play each other again in Jerry World in December, for all we know.
Yeah. Yeah, and
but they play in the real Cotton Bowl this weekend, Mikey.
They
Not
do.
that fake Cotton Bowl in Jerry World.
It used to be. So
Yeah.
let's talk about this game a little bit, because we don't know which Quinn Ewers we're going to get. We don't know. Last year, he dominated, but this year he's got a great Oklahoma defense. The Sooner defense is the real challenge. Where do you see this game going? I like Texas close. I like Texas in a 31-28 kind of game. I would lean. I think that's about right where the over-under is. I think it's around 55. I could be way off on that, but
you're over-under is anywhere from 58 to 60. I think that Texas probably has the more and more we watch LSU not be that good. The Florida State win the first week of the year against LSU doesn't look as good. Texas and Ohio State both have the best 2 wins of the season so far. Texas going to Alabama, Ohio State going to Notre Dame. Oklahoma, I think, is probably the most improved team in the country from last season. They are definitely right now in the mold of Washington and Oregon and USC, just beating the crap out of every team that walks in front of them right now. But they haven't played a team really with a pulse yet. And this is going to be the first test. Texas still they're still prone to, for example, they go on the road and beat Alabama, and the next week they're at home against Wyoming, tied and going into the fourth quarter. They're still prone to some of those letdown spots against teams they have no business losing against, but they did just beat a pretty good Kansas team badly. Oklahoma hasn't played anybody yet. I think that the game is probably competitive for most of the way through. But Quinn Ewers, Xavier Worthy, I think are going to outduel Dylan Gabriel in that Oklahoma attack. And I still think Oklahoma's probably a year away. And so I do like Texas, and I like Texas to cover the 5. I think it's probably going to be somewhere in the range of 34-24, 34-27, like that. Texas, the big thing about Texas now is they've had dudes at skill positions, but their line they play ball at the line of scrimmage now. They have a great defensive line. They have a great offensive line. Oklahoma really hasn't seen that yet. And so, I'm with you. I like Texas, and I like them to cover.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think from a resume standpoint, I don't think there's any question if I almost said Penn State, if Texas wins this ball game, they're the number 1 team. This is their third. This would be their third top 25 victory a week into October. I think they have the right to be the number 1 team if they win this game, unless Georgia wins by 70 points. But that's another game we'll touch on. And let's go back to the Big Ten here, because there is a good Big Ten game that has the potential to be closer than the experts think, and I think we're both on the same side with this. As Maryland, 5-0 Maryland, Tagovailoa, righty Tua, moving in to play the Buckeyes here. Do you think that Maryland offense kind of has enough to hang around with these Buckeyes?
Yeah, I was talking to our Ohio State aficionado, Colin Spencer, today. Actually, a little bit before the podcast. Just send some text back and forth, and I would like to see. Again, we talked about how this game kind of plays into. It's obviously very, very interesting for Penn State fans, right? Not only put aside Ohio State, Penn State's got to go on the road and play Maryland, in early November. Right. Maryland is the king of starting 5-0 and then, not really doing a whole lot. And they beat Indiana. They beat Michigan State with some ease. They really haven't had to play a game that's been very close. Little Tua, as I like to call Tagovailoa, does have an it factor about him and has an ability to create plays. And he's got a good cast of receivers around him. Ohio State hasn't exactly been super flashy on offense this season. And so it's not like Ohio State can go in or like they're going to go in and be up 35-10 at the end of the first half. If they are, we know Maryland is a fraud. And so I do think Maryland has the offensive potential with Tagovailoa to compete. I just think Ohio State's defense this is the best defense Ryan Day has had. And so the game, again, this game is fought so much at the line of scrimmage. We're going to learn a lot about Maryland, more so than learning about Ohio State. I think we know Ohio State is rounding into a very good, solid team. They're not teams of years past with CJ Stroud and Justin Fields, where they're just going to be the best offensive team you ever see. They're going to be a top 10 offensive team, but they play defense now. And so I think Maryland, we're going to find out a lot about Maryland. As long as there's a Tagovailoa playing quarterback there's an opportunity. But they're similar to South Carolina and Spencer Rattler, right? Rattler's great. They pushed Georgia. They were beating Georgia,
but
I
like that in the end, a lot.
In the end, is Tua Tagovailoa going to be running for his life for 4 quarters? If that's the case, then Ohio State can just kind of pin their ears back and go after the quarterback. So I like Ohio State. It's at home, but I'm not saying that for certain they're going to win this game. I think it's going to be something that we're going to learn a lot about who Maryland is. Is this just another fraudulent Maryland team, or are they someone that Penn State's going to have to worry about in November and have they do have firepower? It's just about the line of scrimmage in this game.
I agree. Yeah, I think to your point that South Carolina comparison was great, because I've obviously been watching a lot of the Gamecocks down here and just kind of have an ear in that program, hearing that. But to your point there, I think Ohio State sneaks this out.
Fraudulent slip there. I agree. They're snakes.
35-25, 38-21, around there.
Mm-hmm.
I like it closer than 20.5, which the last line I saw, that's where it was. But yeah, I think it's a great measuring stick kind of for both programs. I think it's to see how efficient Ohio State is playing a higher caliber team than who they have played outside of Notre Dame. Obviously, that was an impressive win to rally down from 10-0 on the road. And this Notre Dame team is different, by the way. Like I'm all biased outside. They're different than what and like everyone just Notre Dame's good. They are a good football team. And so I think like we're gonna find out who's who. But now let's go into the showdown, because this is your favorite game every year. You were there last year.
I will be there.
You'll be there this year. Texas A&M, Jimbo Saban, the rivalry renewed. Mentor, leader, Nick Saban versus Jimbo Fisher. It's the A&M offense against the Bama defense. It's Max Johnson to see what he can do, really, against Kool-Aid and the boys on Bama. I am very excited to watch this. I hope from my heart that A&M wins, but if they lose, I'm not going to be hurt. The same for Bama. If I'm not rooting for Bama, this is a nice game to sit back and be like, football's awesome. This is sweet.
Yeah.
But I want to know your thoughts here, because the line is one. It can go either way. I wouldn't be surprised to see some money. People are going to see that plus value, knowing how Bama's been playing, knowing how A&M, it might swing the whole way over to the Texas A&M side by kickoff 3:30 Saturday.
Yeah. Yeah, the game opened at 7.5 in favor of Alabama, and it's down to 1 as of the last time we've looked at it. There's some rumblings on Twitter and Aggie Twitter that there's some rumors about potentially, and there's something big moving that line, and Vegas knowing something that we don't. I haven't heard it. I'm pretty in tune, in for the most part, for the average non-insider. I guess I don't have insider status anywhere, and so, but for the non-insider, I follow enough, and so I'm not seeing anything where like Jalen Milroe isn't going to play for Alabama, which whether he plays or not, it doesn't necessarily concern me. Keep in mind, I tried to get our host here to come to this game this year, but we'll get him next year. We'll get him there next year. This is a big loser leaves town game, Mike. Loser of this game is effectively out of the college football playoff race, not out of the SEC championship race, as both teams have a loss out of conference. There are some dudes on the field this weekend for both teams. A&M is finally rounding a little bit more into a team. They were a collection of just unbelievable talent. They look more and more like a team each week, even though Connor Weigman, their 5-star quarterback, broke his foot a couple weeks ago against Auburn. Against Miami. Max Johnson, the backup, is just as serviceable, can move the ball with his feet. He's really solid. And so this is going to be a dogfight. This is going to be both teams, knowing that they're backed into a corner with a loss already. And to be totally honest, I don't know which way this is going to go. I think that Alabama is getting better each week. I don't trust them on offense. And I don't trust them throwing the ball. And A&M's kind of weakness, if they do have a weakness defensively, although I think the Miami game might have been a little bit of an aberration, them in the secondary is a little shaky at times. But, man, their front seven's really, really, really good, and it's really, really, really deep. And so if they can get their number one in the country in sack rate, they're number one in the country in QB pressures, and they're number one in the country in tackles for loss. I think it's a toss-up. I think it's going to come down to the wire. I think it's going to be something like 24-21. And I'll go with A&M winning the game. I don't feel confident in that pick whatsoever. Don't quote me on it. I think it could go either way. I'm actually going to stick and I'm going to push out and say it's going to be a toss-up. It can go either way, but it's going to be in that 24-21, 21-20. Weird stuff's going to happen. I just feel it, feel something like that. But both teams are trending in a good direction with a ton of talent and, solid coaches who have won national championships. This one, if you're a college football fan, I really do think it's just must watch, right? Like you said, just sit back as a college football fan and watch two teams, just go into the room, lock the door, and whoever comes out is still alive and they're playing football for a national championship still. Right. The team that loses is man, we already got 2 losses and it's not even October 8th yet.
Dude, it could be the third straight year this game final play. And it really could. The line, the anticipation, what's on the line for both teams, it's just I love football. I just love football.
I know. It gets me. I'm getting pumped.
I'm so
being
excited.
there.
And then don't even get me started on Dallas San Fran that's happening Sunday night. It's a great weekend to have a bye.
I know.
Yeah,
I know. Well, dude, it's gonna be it's just gonna be. I think it's gonna be a war. It's gonna be just a crazy atmosphere. But like you said, it's just this is football. This is what this time of year is all about.
It's the best. And I know we say this every year. This is a trademarked line, but I feel bad for people who don't watch sports. I feel bad. I genuinely do.
Yeah.
There's 3 types of people I feel bad for in life, and one of them is people who don't get the enjoyment and the serotonin after watching Maction on a Thursday in the middle of November. It's just something I can't wait for that game. So let's move into our final game that we're going to preview here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Kentucky, Georgia, because Georgia is the number 1 team. They're the defending champions, but they have yet to cover. And we know statistically teams that don't cover it's going to come crashing down. I'm seeing 13.5, 14.5 here. It's really a game that it's Georgia's toughest test yet of the season. They're playing against a team with one of the biggest playmakers in Ray Davis kind of on the Kentucky sideline, who's coming off a game that scored 3 touchdowns against Florida. This is another game that I have circled. You know how on Saturday mornings you wake up and I think Barstool tweets one out, but they show the slate of games and it has every single game. This one is a red circle around because I just want to see what Georgia team comes out. I'm very excited. Which way do you see this game going? Give me your side on this and how the dogs fare.
So over under 47.5. This game hasn't sniffed 47 since 2018. Last year there were 22 points scored. 2020 there were 17 points scored. 2019 there were 21 points scored. I like the under. That's my first thing off the bat. This line opened at something like 18 or 19. It's down to 2 touchdowns now. We're gonna find out if Georgia is. This is a team that can win a 3rd straight national championship this week. We're gonna find out this week. They only have so many opportunities to play legitimate teams that have a pulse, and then show the country something. And so they have an advantage. The fact that if they can go all the way to December and have all this time to kind of just like improve and work out kinks and then play whoever wins the SEC West every single year, that gives them a massive advantage, right? Georgia has been in a scenario that Wisconsin was in the Big Ten West, where they could just kind of steamroll through the Big Ten West and show up in Indy every year and play in the SEC title or the Big Ten title game. Georgia is the same case. This Kentucky team, though, I think can push them. They beat the doors off a pretty good Florida team last week. And I don't think Georgia covers the 14. I don't think Sanford Stadium is going to be it's not Kyle Field, it's not Beaver Stadium, it's not Bryant Denny, it's not the Swamp, it's not Tiger Stadium. It doesn't have that same I'm going on the road to Georgia feel, right? If I'm going on the road to a place that's just impossible to play. So I don't think home field advantage is going to be that big. I'm not going to pick Kentucky, but I think Georgia kind of strolls through another game where they're going to struggle. And Carson Beck hasn't shown me a ton. It's going to come down to if Kentucky can take away Brock Bowers. Everybody's been talking about how good Brock Bowers is. They just discovered him this week. He's been the best player in college football generally for about a year and a half now. And he's going to be that Travis Kelce. He's going to be that Gronk in the NFL here in a couple years. So, I like Georgia. I don't like them to cover. I think they win by 10, 13, maybe a 20-10 game. But I like the under for sure.
Yeah, I apologize. I think my mic just went out there. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
There's some technical difficulties behind the scene here. You can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. All right. Anyways, yeah, I'm not sure what happened there, but we're back to it. I agree with you. Sorry, it literally cut out like you were talking. Okay. I was trying to read lips. I
was just saying some absolutely fire things about this game.
Well, it picked it up in the system, but I couldn't. It didn't direct here. Explain to me like I'm 5. Give me the Spark Note version, basically what you just said.
Do we want, or let's go what they do on Josh Pate. All right, end point. Do it again. Let's go. Georgia, Kentucky. Okay, so start the segment over.
Well, no, it's in there. Everything you said is in there. I just couldn't hear it. So they're going to hear it. And we're going to hear this.
Oh, they're going to hear it.
Because we don't edit.
I didn't know if you can chop this. We don't edit. We no edits.
We're not
we go raw. Okay. No, I think Georgia at some point has to play championship quality football. And I think that they had a scare last week. And I think that helps them. A scare 2 weeks ago against South Carolina. I think that helps them in this scenario where they're actually playing a good team. I don't think South Carolina is that good. I think they have a good quarterback. Auburn certainly is not that good. They just have a tough place to play in. Kentucky is pretty solid. They're going to be an 8 or 9 win team, and probably going to be ranked in the top 20 at the end of the year. So I do actually think Georgia plays better this week, but I don't think it's going to be pretty. I think it's going to be something like 20-10. And if Kentucky can stop Brock Bowers, I think they have a chance to win the game. But he's going to get his. And I think Carson Beck is going to have to play well in order to and make plays down the stretch, which he did against Auburn. He's proven he can do it. So I like Georgia. I don't like him to cover, and I like the under. For the under, I feel, is a pretty safe bet here.
What did you say the under was at 47.5?
47.5, and it hasn't. In this series, they haven't sniffed that number in over 5 years.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on the under there. I'm on the Georgia side. I think Georgia gets it together. I like 24-10 around there. So technically, I guess whenever you get it, you'd be at there. But now let's kind of go into our final segment here. Let's each rattle off our top 4 teams. Let everyone know where we're at. If you go first here, give me your top 4 teams. Give me 1 to 2 cents on why they're there, and give me the two teams looking in.
Mhm.
Number one team.
Yeah. This is tough. I've spent a lot of time today when we said that we were going to do this segment. I've spent a lot of time today, like thinking about this because this is probably the most wide open the top 12 or 14 teams have been in the country, and maybe since like 2007. Like there's just nobody that really is standing out. And so you look at all these different metrics, teams are all over the place. I was looking at Bill Connolly's SP Plus on ESPN. The FPI is Penn State 8, but the resume SP Plus, taking into account like what their pure resume is, actually has them number 1 in the country, right? So it's just, and it has teams like Georgia at 10. Okay, so it's just kind of all over the place. My mentality in this is really like, who have you beaten and who have you played? I'm not going to sit here and respect a Michigan team. I think they're good. I think they're a top 5 team in the country. You can't sit here and play UNLV and and UConn or whoever the heck they play and tell me that you're a top 5 team in the country right now. And so my top 4 is, I like Ohio State 1. I think they have one of the best wins right now in the country at Notre Dame. I like Texas 2. I think they have one of the best wins in the country going into Bryant-Denny Stadium and beating Alabama. And then they beat a very good Kansas team bad. Yeah, Jalen Daniels wasn't playing for Kansas, but their backup has had a lot of experience playing games because Daniels has been out a lot, and they went and kind of just took care of business. I like Oregon 3. They went into one, they kind of stomped on the Colorado story and took care of business, did not screw around with them, and beat one of the best quarterbacks in the country 42-6. Plus, they went into a tough environment on the road in Lubbock against Texas Tech, beat a team that just came off a loss, who Tech is probably going to end up being a top 30 team in the country at the end of the year, and went in there and won. Lastly, and this is where I think those are the top 3 teams to me. After that, it starts to get like kind of dicey. I have Florida State 4 because I do think they have 2 good wins. I don't think they're great wins, but I think the win against LSU is a good win and how they did it. And then them going to Clemson and winning on the road at Clemson. Clemson had their back against the wall. They had to have that win, and Florida State pulled it out. And there's something to be said about that. So those are my top 4. And then I know we said top 4. I have Penn State and Georgia at 5 and 6 right after that.
Okay, no, I wanted to hear who you really had at the 5 and 6 spot, because our top 4s are pretty comparable. I don't have Oregon in. I have Oregon looking in. My number 1 team in the country is actually Georgia, and they're there because maybe I'm putting too much into who they were last year, who they are this year. But I feel like until they are actually dethroned, until there's a loss in their column, they have the rightful number 1 spot. And like I said, this is not necessarily the best 4 teams. It's who we've seen them play. And I just think where they're at from the end of last season, they're my number 1 team in the country. At 2, I actually have Michigan, where I think we kind of oppose here. I think Penn State and Michigan are comparable in the terms of the way they handle business early on. I think what separates Penn State and Michigan is what Michigan's been able to do late in the year that Penn State hasn't. Michigan's been able to clean up in conference. And as it looks now, after that loss, or the first half tie, I give the advantage to Michigan. My number 3, I actually have Texas. I think Texas has the best resume, as I mentioned previously. I love what Sark's doing there. I think if they win tomorrow or Saturday, they're the number 1 team in the country. And at 4, I have the Buckeyes. Take that as you will. I still there's QB plays still kind of up in the air, undecided, but they're weapons on offense. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be the next Justin Jefferson in the NFL, have that kind of impact. And looking in, I have Penn State, Florida State, Oregon. Looking really outside, I have Washington State. Dude, I am so excited to watch Washington State and Oregon in 2 weeks. That is going to be a heck of a game. That is going to be fun.
And what's gonna be very cool is like we're gonna have a much clearer picture a month from now.
Yeah.
I think there's gonna be a lot of teams alive, but you're gonna, like you said, Washington and Oregon are gonna play each other next weekend, right? You're gonna have USC and Notre Dame play each other at some point. Obviously, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, they'll all play each other. And so, I think Texas and Oklahoma, this is why this is so important. Saturday is like, it's going to be the last time they're really going to have a chance to show the country, like, are they really a top tier team, right? Because who does Texas play the rest of the year that's going to be like, hey, that impresses anybody? You're same with Oklahoma. So, yeah, I mean, you gave 4 complete. This is what's crazy is like, ball well, and I think I do too. And we gave 4 completely different teams that we thought were in our top 4, but both are like totally reasonable suggestions. That's what makes this season so fun. I mean, you look at the top 5 right now. 5 different teams have number 1 place votes in the AP poll, right? It's a crazy season, and that's why like the world shouldn't come to an end if Penn State loses in a couple weeks at Ohio State, because the season's not over. But it's so wide open. This isn't a unique opportunity where it's not like, all right, well, yeah, they could get in the playoff, but there's no way they're beating Georgia. There's no way they're beating Alabama, right? It's so wide open. So I think so you give more credence to like, hey, until you get knocked off, like you deserve to be the head of the schoolyard, right? You're the schoolyard bully until somebody knocks you out. That's more where you're at.
Yeah, absolutely. I just don't want to dismiss Georgia. Like I think we
right.
tend to early in the year we tend to have these overreaction. It's never as bad as it seems. It's never as good as it looks. I think I stick to 2 things in football. In the NFL, football doesn't matter until after Thanksgiving, and in college football, it doesn't matter until you get to play your first ranked conference opponent. Those are the principles I stick with while I evaluate teams. That's what I do. And that's kind of where I'm at. But it's just going to be a very exciting weekend ahead. Other games that we forgot to mention: Arizona, USC. I mean, you talked about Arkansas, Ole Miss, LSU, Missouri. Tons of great games. But this is kind of this layout now of the show. We're gonna talk Penn State, and then we're gonna open up each week that Penn State segment. I mean, the Ohio State, Michigan. That's gonna get. We're gonna talk about that basically position by position, break down that. But the longer we get in the season, and especially after the initial 4 come out, we're gonna cater to everyone's team. This, like I said, this isn't a Penn State podcast. We don't work for Blue and White Illustrated. We don't work for 24/7. We're here. We're just talking ball.
We work for Mikey Kresovich.
We had this idea in back fall of 2021 in your basement when we started this as a podcast. We didn't have a camera. You weren't in Houston. I wasn't in Charleston. Like, we did this because we're like, let's just listen. We send 14,000 word text to our group chat, and let's take this to another audience. Now we're trying to give our takes to you guys. And we do appreciate the support as always. Thank you guys for listening. Garrett, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, man, it's fun. I'll have some content I'll send to you from Aggie Land tomorrow. I'll be at midnight practice tomorrow night, and then at the game Saturday. And can't wait. We're starting to get into the thick of things this season, so it's gonna be fun.
Absolutely. Well, hey, take it easy. Thank you guys for listening. Take care.